Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Source 16 News. Thanks for joining us. Well, today, it's Groundhog Day.
He weighed his surroundings carefully and found that there was no shadow around. So an early spring it will be!
Groundhog Day has been celebrated in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania since 1886, when every February 2nd, Phil comes out of his burrow on Gobbler's Knob in front of thousands of followers from all over the world to predict the weather for the rest of the winter. According to legend, if Punxsutawney Phil sees his shadow, there will be 6 more weeks of winter weather. If he does not see his shadow, there will be an early spring. Now, even though Phil did not see his shadow this morning, we'll just have to wait and see if Mother Nature backs up his prediction. Wintry weather this morning in Texas forced former Commander-in-Chief George W. Bush to cancel his book signing at Fort Campbell just hours before he was to appear. Soldiers and their families waited patiently in line for more than an hour at the local Post main exchange for what was supposed to be the former president's second book signing since he released his best-selling memoir, Decision Points, in November. Source 16 spoke to Captain Richard Anderson about how he felt about the cancellation.
I'm not too concerned about the time. I'm usually up at this time anyway, but as are most of the people in line here. But a little disappointing. You know, we know a lot of people came through the last couple of days, getting the books and getting their tickets. It's disappointing, but at the same time, it's understandable. You know, he can't control the weather, and it is what it is.
Bush's memoir focuses on key decisions he made during his presidency, which includes sending thousands of troops to Afghanistan and Iraq. Fort Campbell officials announced late this afternoon that the former president's book signing has been rescheduled for Wednesday, February 16th. A Hopkinsville man has been sentenced to life in prison for killing his mother last August. 34-year-old Michael Johnson admitted to violating an emergency order of protection, which made his case eligible for the death penalty. But due to his plea deal, he will serve 20 years of a life sentence before he's eligible for parole. On August 23, 2010, 54-year-old Deborah Johnson's body was found on the back porch of her Schaefer Street mobile home by police during a welfare check. Police found and arrested her son, Michael, later that night at the Holiday Inn on Fort Campbell Boulevard. According to an autopsy report, Ms. Johnson died of asphyxia by compression or an inability to breathe. 8 months after a 39-year-old Hopkinsville man was shot and stabbed at his apartment, police have arrested 1 of 3 individuals in connection to the crime. Hopkinsville police arrested and charged 21-year-old Shalisha Settles of Hopkinsville with first-degree assault. Settles was taken into custody on the strength of a warrant this morning around 1:25 at a home on West 7th Street. Around 11:30 on the morning of May 22, 2010, police reported that 2 masked and armed assailants, one of which was Settles, entered apartment 40, building 102 of Laurel Cove Apartments and demanded money from the safe of 39-year-old Antonio Burris. The warrant says Settles was able to get into the apartment because her younger sister was already inside and had left the door unlocked. Police say that a third female, armed with a box cutter, also entered the apartment and a scuffle ensued. Settles' younger sister reportedly suffered a laceration to the inside of her right wrist, and Burris suffered 2 gunshot wounds, one in his right leg and another in his groin, before he disarmed the assailant. The 2 assailants then fled the scene in a maroon Chevy Malibu. Both the female and Burris were transported to Jenny Stewart Medical Center, where she was treated and released, and Burris was flown by air evac to Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville, where he was treated and recovered from his gunshot wounds. The warrant states all 3 participated in the assault, but to date, Settles is the only individual to be arrested in connection to the crime. Motivating our nation's students, former professor, actor, author, economist, and pop culture icon Ben Stein says is lacking in today's schools.
People just don't bother to learn nowadays, and the problem is extremely concentrated in the African American and Hispanic community, in which high school dropout rates are far, far higher than they are in the Caucasian white community.
The celebrity gave a lecture as part of a presidential lecture series at Murray State University yesterday. The recognized top economist also spoke about the state of the economy and says it's reviving with corporate profits and stock markets being up, but says unemployment and the housing market will continue to suffer.
I think we're entering a new world in which people who are manual workers are just going to have a very hard time being employed for a good long while, because there just aren't that many jobs for unskilled manual workers unless housing recovers tremendously. And there doesn't seem to be much sign of that happening. And housing does not seem to be recovering largely because there is such a huge inventory of foreclosed and houses and homes about to enter foreclosure.
Former keynote speakers in Murray's presidential lecture series include Desmond Tutu, Richard Norton Smith, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., among others. The city of Oak Grove is in the beginning stages of building a new emergency medical services building. Last night, council members approved a land acquisition directly off exit 89 during an executive session. Land acquisitions take place so the property value won't go up when a city is looking at purchasing land. Now that the acquisition has been approved, the city will contact the property owners in order to purchase their land. The council also approved the purchase of a new police cruiser and a request from Hopkinsville Christian County Chamber President Carter Hendricks in supporting Christian County Cares 2015. A second reading of amending the alcohol regulations was also approved, giving Oak Grove bars the option to extend their alcohol sales for another hour. Just in case you missed the news last night at 10 and this morning, during Hopkinsville City Council meeting last night, council members received an audit report on the city's finances. Certified public accountant John DeAngelis of Hopkinsville compared the city's assets to other area cities.
Particularly looking at cash versus your annual budget, maybe your long-term debt, some of those things. Madisonville as a percentage cash to their annual activity, you were in better shape than me. You were about the same as Henderson. Madisonville doesn't have as much long-term debt. Paducah, you were doing better than them as far as your general fund cash, but Paducah has more special project cash stashed away.
Meanwhile, DeAngelis went into further detail about the city's expenses.
Revenues, your tax revenues, tax and license revenues increased maybe 1% over the year before. Unfortunately, your health insurance fund did not go down much. Police and fire pension funding was up, but in expenses, what we saw was police pension funding was 20% higher than the year before. We saw public works, some various public works expenses were actually down.
In other business, Mayor Kemp announced the city was awarded a U.S. Department of Homeland Security grant.
FEMA Region 4 has awarded us a grant for generators to be installed at the municipal building and the Hopkinsville Police Department and the Emergency Communications Center and the Hopkinsville Fire Department.
During the mayor's comments, Kemp spoke about the city's bird problem and how McGee Pest Control is using noise-making devices to disperse the large population of birds. City Council then went into closed session to discuss pending and proposed litigation and property acquisition and took no action. Coming up tonight at 10, we'll have a story about the bird problem in Hopkinsville. Well, last week we told you about several area schools implementing plans to make up the days missed due to the recent rounds of winter precipitation. Well, now another school system has announced its plans to recoup those days. Mayfield Independent School officials have announced that schools will be in session Monday, February 21st and Thursday, March 31st to make up for days missed because of snow. Fort Campbell's 4th Brigade combat team, the Currahees, added a couple of military working dogs last month to help seek and find improvised explosive devices and bomb-making materials in Afghanistan. According to Fort Campbell officials, the canines arrived January 13th and will remain with the Currahees until the end of their deployment. Sergeant Nicholas Kozarowski says the dogs require some special attention, but their needs are not that much different from a regular soldier. Overall, military officials say the benefit of having dogs with the units far outweigh the challenges they create. Task Force Currahee plans to add 31 dogs and handler teams this spring. Now here's Hopkinsville Christian County Crime Stoppers Coordinator Paul Ray with the featured fugitives of the week.
This week, police need your help locating two wanted fugitives.
Police are looking for 44-year-old John Milton Campbell, who's wanted for absconding probation. Campbell is a white male who stands 5 feet, 10 inches tall and weighs 230 pounds. His last known address was the 900 block of J.P. Campbell Road. Police are also looking for 24-year-old John Mann Jr., who's wanted on multiple warrants. Mann is a white male who stands 6 feet tall and weighs 195 pounds. His last known address was the 3600 block of Velma Drive.
If you know where police can locate these wanted fugitives, and we've got cash waiting for you. Pick up your phone now and call our tips line at 887-TIPS. If your information leads to an arrest, Crime Stoppers will pay you a cash reward. And remember, we will never ask your name, and you will not have to appear in court. Well, this week's Fugitive of the Week, I'm Officer Paul Ray for Crime Stoppers.
Get ready. Tonight's Powerball jackpot is $35 million. Coming up Friday, the Mega Millions jackpot is $12 million. Don't forget also, you can take a look at past winning numbers and check out all the different chances to win by visiting the Kentucky Lottery's website. That's kylottery.com.